extracurricular is anything in terms of learning and a curriculum outside of what school's offering. So school has the set of classes you got to take for high school. Those are the school's regular curriculum. Extracurricular is any sort of outside activities that you do. For a lot of high schoolers, the sound extracurricular is just the activities after school. So it's the clubs, it's the sports, right? And maybe something like band because you actually have to participate after school. What I want you to understand is that extracurriculars can be anything in terms of self-learning or personal hobbies and interests and things that you enjoy and learning that you've done on your own, okay? And so I actually didn't end up putting this on my extracurricular, but my parents bought me a guitar and I learned how to play the guitar, at least my chords and some basic songs, just by watching a DVD over one of my summers, right? But it didn't end up on my extracurriculars because a lot of people think mom and dad have to pay somebody to teach you, or it has to be some sort of situation where you end up getting a certificate or something like that. That's not always true. Extracurriculars can be very broad in terms of things that you enjoy doing. It's that question here for extracurricular, is it a skill or something that not every other kid does, okay? I think every other kid in this world sits in front of a computer and sits in front of their TV, and they know that stuff, okay? But in terms of other activities, do you go outside of that to do other things to contribute or to enjoy life as well, okay? So there was the snowboarding side of things that didn't end up on my extracurricular. There was the guitar example as well, right? There was the coding example of self-learning. I'd even go as far as to say, every summer we would go camping and, go to Yosemite, and I've hiked up certain famous trails, gone to the top of Yosemite Falls, for example. And we could, you add those little experiences on there. Again, we'll kind of order them in terms of what's most important, what's less important, right? You probably don't want the vacations to be your top ones. But at the end of it, it does help us fill in a more well-rounded view of who you are, because a lot of kids don't realize that what they're doing outside is still considered extracurricular. But we have such a feeling that it has to be something where mom and dad are paying for us to do stuff. Does that make sense? Or it has to be attached to a club at school for it to feel like a real extracurricular, right? Does that make sense? So, and even as much, there's some students that down the line say, you know what, I'd like to put a few more things in there. I'll even put down that I've had a tutor like Eric, exclusive tutoring San Diego, description, realized I was struggling in math and asked my parents to help me hire a tutor in order to excel in that class again. I think that's actually a good approach of saying, you know what, I understand if I need help, I go seek it out, right? And therefore, it's not saying it like, oh, I needed help to keep myself or to boost my abilities type of thing, but more so, I understand eventually I'm going to need help, and this is what I do when that does happen. Does that make sense? Okay. Go ahead, take a quick moment, see if there's anything else you can add in there if I elicited any sort of extra idea of what exactly you're doing. So water polo, what is it that you're doing water polo? Are you playing for the school? Are you just going to the local pool? Are you playing water polo by yourself in the backyard because you happen to have a pool in your backyard? You see how there's so many different things that could come to mind when it says water polo here? So description here, I don't want you to limit yourself to 160 words to start off, but that's what will come up when it comes down to the actual application. But for now, in the description, what you want to do is give me everything in terms of, okay, this was my high school team. We had practices for 2 hours where we did drills. We practiced our treading water. We would have tournaments over the summer, but then during the season, which is from the fall season or whatever, from this month to this month, we're practicing 5 days a week, an hour and a half after school, 2 games a week. Like, give me all of that information to start, okay? From there, then what we can do is we can filter out the useless stuff and then use the possible stories and things that you might actually have to explain about, what you've really done, and use those as potential personal statement, essays, et cetera, et cetera. In terms of activity name, let's not just do water polo. What is it, right? High school, Del Norte High School varsity water polo versus just that. Because keep in mind, your activity name isn't going to be, I mean, it's still limited to a certain number of characters, but you can kind of put extra information in there so that you can avoid wasting space under description later. Does that make sense? You don't need to say it's the high school team under description, but put it under the activity name. Okay? Got that?